Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 173 of Retro Encounter. We are discussing Zero Escape, Virtue's Last Reward. It is a reunion of our previous 999 panelists. So with us, we have Monsoon, or Mike Sollosi.
Hey, we're bringing the band back together. I love these episodes.
Yay!
Plus, I think we, pretty much right after we all finished 999, we were desperate to play the sequel.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So we also have with us Jade, or Leona McCallum.
Hi there. I'm so happy to be back.
It should be a good time. And
yeah, this is my favorite of the series. I'm ready to talk.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack. And also with us we have Trent Argirov, aka Stranger.
I'd ally with you guys every time. It's nice to meet you, everyone.
And I'd ally with
I'd
ally with you guys most of the time.
Yeah.
And I'm Hilary Andreff. I don't have a code name, but I also don't think I'm running this game, so I'm not Zero Junior in this
You're
scenario.
a protagonist.
Yes. or actually in this version, I guess that makes me like the cranky old man.
There's multiple cranky old men in this game.
Yup.
Okay, so let's get started with kind of an introduction. We're going to talk about basically what's the game, the basic ideas. So this is the sequel to 999. It kind of is a prerequisite to know what happens in 999 to really fully understand everything that's going on in VLR. We have a few characters coming back. We have the basic concept of the nonary games again. And same kind of game mechanics, although fine-tuned a bit with the escape segments and story segments and an additional little mini game, as Zero Junior describes it. So any detail to add?
The Ambidex game.
Yes. The mini game is called
the Ambidex game.
Ambidex Edition! I love Zero Junior so much.
I freaking hate that little rabbit.
I love him. How can you
hate him?
He's so prevalent in the first half of the game, and then in the second half, I miss him so much.
Yeah. So Zero's presence in this game is a really kind of cool-looking quantum computer rabbit, who kind of has a very sassy, flippant attitude.
Full of sass.
Yeah.
Does a lot of hair puns and carrot puns as well, which are always good and tasteful for the situation at hand in the game.
And
nothing better than a bunch of puns.
Yeah, and Zero also mentions from the beginning that it's an AI. So it immediately sort of disallows the idea that someone's controlling it like a puppet. It's like no. Zero's the real Zero Senior is one of you guys. They don't need to be manipulating me with a video game controller or something.
Yeah, so they can totally be part of this game and not need to run away to control me for a few seconds, so you can't figure me out.
Yeah, which is neat that they established that immediately, because that's a little bit of a contrast from 999, where the group kind of discusses, well, what are the ways where Zero could be one of us? Could they still manipulate all this stuff? So they just lay it out there right away that, yes, Zero Junior is independent and...
Yeah, they come out right away. Basically, 999 takes a long time to get to that point where they're one of us could be Zero and also, is killing people and blah, blah, blah. And Virtue's Last Reward is right away, it's probably one of us.
There is very little doubt that it is one of us.
Clover's I've done 3 of these,
almost hard to confirm. Yeah.
Honestly, Clover takes it in more stride than I thought she would. I thought she would immediately go into a tantrum or a panic attack or something.
I guess it's just become another day in her life, another nonary game, another week.
She handles it better than I thought she would. She did not immediately find the nearest hatchet and murder everyone. For example.
Honestly, I was going through the beginning parts of this game, and I'm like, all right, which one of these flowcharts is where is axe ending Clover going to show up here?
Yes.
She sort of showed up in one bad ending, I think.
Yeah, she's usually okay if she's got that one person she trusts. In this game, it's Alice. But when Alice kind of is out of touch, then she loses the plot again.
Yeah. Things don't always go well for Alice in this game. In fact, they don't really go well for anyone sometimes.
I
No. I don't think the game goes well for anyone, even towards the very end of the game. They're all going through some really rough stuff, both personally.
And even some of the important endings basically end with room full of corpses, and yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
To back up a little bit, just as a quick explanation, so these people are stuck in what appears to be kind of a warehouse, maybe quarantine facility, but probably not at the beginning. And they are in a very, very high stress, high stakes situation because, like in 999, they are being forced to solve puzzles and play the Ambidex game, which is, they describe it as a sort of prisoner's dilemma scenario where you're either part of a pair, which is a new interesting thing that's different from 999, or you go by yourself and you have to vote to either ally with each other or betray each other. And it's all based on who goes through which chromatic doors and solves which puzzles. And there are usually 3 points at which that voting happens, and it gets interesting.
It's all about them points. Got to get up to 9 points, and then you can go through the number 9 door, so you can escape. And the quickest way is usually technically to betray, because that could get you 3 points at a time, where ally only gets you 2. So that's where the real drama comes in, is who's going to betray, who's going to ally and work with the group.
Right. And to make things more complicated, the bracelets work a little bit differently this time. If you're in a scenario where you disobey the rules, or if you don't have any bracelet points left, after an Ambidex game, you get pumped full of Soperil, which is the anesthetic from 999, and then basically a muscle relaxant so that you die basically peacefully.
Yeah, that's nice of them.
Right.
Tubocurine, just to be nice.
And the two-step nature of the death, first the sleeping thing and then the relaxant that kills you, factors into the plot sometimes, because I mean, in certain endings that does happen to you, and there are ways the plot allows you to get out of it. It's confusing. The game uses a flowchart navigation system similar to later versions of 999, where you can go to jump between different plot points and play or replay scenarios and make different decisions, whether it's with the Ambidex game or with a plot relevant decision. But they are extremely aware of the flowchart this time.
Oh yeah.
In a way, with 999, like, there's really only one time in 999 where it makes it the game's clear that you're remembering something from another timeline, and that's with the coffin ending and true ending versus the safe ending. But in this game, that knowledge of other timelines plays into almost the entire core structure of the game.
Yeah, it's a requirement. There are some times where you can't proceed without information from a different version of events.
Which is just cool. It's just thematically and mechanically cool to have information of the timelines being the need and the actual key to progress. I thought that was extremely well done.
Yeah, everything about Virtue's Last Reward just seems like, okay, let's take this concept from 999 and make it bigger, expand it, make it applicable in so many different ways.
And it is really streamlined, or at least it felt like it was. I know we were kind of discussing this as we played, but once you have that starting bit of information, it does feel kind of natural. You kind of know where to go and how to solve the blocks and which order.
Yeah, it's kind of like a domino effect. Eventually, you get so much information, and eventually the endings just come and come and come.
All right, so we've talked a little bit about the basics. Do we want to introduce characters a little bit more now?
Yay. I love the characters in this game.
They're all really good. Yeah.
Should we all say what our favorite character is, and then we'll go introduce the rest after that?
Okay. Yeah, let's go around.
Okay,
all right.
I'll start. I like
Okay.
Luna.
She's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I think she's the only person that votes ally every single round.
Every single
Yep.
time. She will never vote betray.
And
Which is what I found myself wanting to do as I played this game. I did all the ally flow chart.
And nobody does betray every single round, not even Dio. I was a little bit surprised when I found the one scenario where Dio voted ally.
Yeah, what is that scenario? I think it just he felt like he was being it'd be too obvious at that point to vote betray.
Yeah,
Wasn't someone going to die if he did?
something like that. He didn't want to be a too obvious villain or something.
Yeah, it did stop him usually when someone was about to die. Usually always had an excuse about why it was the logical conclusion. Yeah.
But not Luna. Luna sweetly always votes ally every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love her so much. She's just she's so nice. You can't help but mistrust her at the start before you really know her. You just feel like, well, you're such an obvious bad guy. And then she's like, no, I'm just genuinely nice.
Yeah, there's this interesting sort of arc where toward the beginning you're like, all right, you were very, very super sweet. and then there's the knife, and something happens with her AB room, and you kind of suspect that she may have killed someone for a while. And you're like, oh, were you being too nice? But then it sort of comes into this nice arc, and by the time you get to the true ending,
yeah, your life and death basically boils down to whether or not your friendship with Luna, if you believe Luna enough to go against what you think the facts are and to say no, she wouldn't have, it wasn't her. Because she will abandon you in that warehouse if you do not say.
Yeah, that the bad ending where you sort of don't trust Luna.
Oh god,
is really heartbreaking.
Yeah, you can just imagine her looking off distantly, so sad that her love would, not trust her in that way, and she's just like, well, I'll let you die then.
And I like how in that timeline they Zero Junior actually comes back to explain this to you.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of rubs it in.
For me, it's with a bullet. I mean, Luna is fantastic, and her ending is heart-wrenching. But what's the word? The dual character of Quark and Tenmyoji were my favorite characters in the whatchamacallit in the entire game. Father-son narratives are a soft spot for me. What's the word? And finding out who Tenmyoji actually is, or if you click onto it earlier, and having the context of Quark's canonical ending as well. Yeah, it brought me to tears. The way that he was describing it, it was like, why is he describing this horrible wasteland, this place that seems to be so barren and so Darwinistic, and it run down, destroyed. Why is a root beer float so expensive?
Yeah.
That's the word. That's the crux of it. And then when you finally click onto in the room, I think it's the director's office. That was when I finally clicked into the fact. I was like, oh, he has a picture of Akane. Why does he have a picture? Oh
my god.
Yeah, and I was like, no. And then the game confirmed my suspicion, and I was like, that's doubly rough. The double blow of finding out that. I mean, is it okay to throw that into the wild?
Oh no, we're gonna spoil the hell out of the game this entire episode, so we can jump into it now.
Is the main character from 999 Junpei. Junpei. I love Junpei in 999, and to know that his timeline, or at least the timeline that's presented in Virtue's Last Reward, is literally the worst timeline in terms of him. Him and Akane kind of reconciling, and instead him kind of throwing himself into kind of this adoptive fatherhood was big emotions, big feels all round. And the moment where you meet her in that really cool final place, which we'll probably get to later, it's the layering of theming and emotion from 999 to Virtue's Last Reward was it's exquisite, both in Tenmyoji and Junpei and Quark's character, but also in Clover's character as well. Yeah, it's good. They're good characters. Those two are my favorite characters. They are some good. Quark's a good lad, and Tenmyoji is it's very sad, very good man, but very, very sad.
He spends his entire life looking for Akane and never finds her, and then he's old before he realizes it.
Yeah.
And he tries to find redemption in this young boy that's abandoned. His parents are dead. I do question his parenting skills with the grandpa tapes.
Yep.
A little bit.
Yeah, some parts of Tenmyoji that I'm like, oh, okay, that's before I knew it was Junpei, and even regardless of knowing that it was Junpei, I was like, oh, okay. It's like, oh, this is your favorite scotch, Grandpa. And Quark's like, wow. And he's like, oh, man, I can't have a drink of it now. It's probably the worst time to have so, but maybe later, though. And Quark's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, geez, okay.
It's actually kind of funny because Clover does something similar in the lounge at one point. She's like, now's the best time to have a drink. It seems just sort of like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I was like, I'm 21 now.
Yep. People are unraveling before our eyes. Just have a drink. It'll make it better, guys. Woo! Yeah, it was questionable parenting. Questionable parenting and goofiness aside, Quark's naivety and him describing, I feel like it's two halves of a complete arc, as it were. What's the word when you get both, you understand who Tenmyoji is, and you get Quark's little letter at the end. I think it's
right.
It like kind of completes itself, and it enhances something that I love in storytelling. It enhances the narrative as a whole, but it also enhances the narrative of both of those two characters, and it's something that I think Virtue's Last Reward does pitch perfectly, is that every single ending kind of enhances either a different character, the character that's involved in it, or the narrative at large, which, good storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very important point to make because there are so many games now that try to have multiple endings, but to connect them and have them build on one another, I think it was one of the really cool things about this game. And I've got to agree. I mean, there was just a really beautiful thread going from 999 through VLR with Akane and Tenmyoji / Junpei. And I think Quark's description of his life with Tenmyoji in that ending, really, you just got such a vivid picture of him adopting this kid and the struggles they went through and how they really, really cared for each other despite the fact that they were in a rough situation. They were in a wasteland with very few resources.
And they didn't know quite how to take each other as well.
Mm-hmm.
Good Junpei didn't quite understand kids, and Quark didn't quite understand how Junpei felt. But in the end, they really did find that connection. It was really beautiful.
Yeah, they did. And when I got to that moment in that ending where they're like, okay, we understand each other, that was, I think, one of the points where I cried a little bit. I was like, oh, they love each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Don't be mad at my grandpa. I'm like, oh, I can't be mad at your grandpa.
Oh.
Yeah, I can't be mad at his freaking grandpa. No, thank you, sorry.
You can't be mad at him because of his past and the interesting plot stuff, and you can't be mad at him because you spent an entire other game playing with him.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that the revelation that Tenmyoji is Junpei can come at a few different points depending on sort of how you play the game and what order you see the endings in.
Yeah.
But there's but not only for that plot twist, but for others as well, there's a fair amount of foreshadowing. It plays fair with the story breadcrumbs that you get, and it's like playing through this game for the second time, because I played this for the first time, I think, like 4 years ago or so. Yeah, 2015 sounds right. Like the way that Tenmyoji reacts to Clover for the first time and keeps trying to tell her something in during certain plot points, and the way he reacts to seeing the corpse of the old woman in certain timelines for the first time.
And the I trust Clover. Well, and Clover's confused. She's like, "Why do you trust me?"
It's impressive, not only for that twist, but for a couple of others, especially about Sigma and Phi. But I think that VLR, even though it has a lot of real nonsense happening in its plot about the quantum mechanics and science fiction stuff. It mostly plays fair with storytelling. There's foreshadowing. The twists feel earned. But when they come, the twists like hit you like hammers. It's amazing.
All right, so who else do we have in our group? Or actually, other favorites.
Yeah. Sollosi, do you have a favorite that you want to share?
Yeah, I think for a while my favorite was Alice because she's sort of like Lotus. She's like this. She's like the cool, smart lady who doesn't know how to wear a shirt. But I think, but by the end of the game, my favorite was definitely Fi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yes.
She shares Sigma's ability to remember what happens, and I should say the player's acknowledgement of what happens between timelines, and this game continues to subvert the idea of multiple endings and multiple playthroughs by having characters literally remember what happens every time. But she knows more than Sigma for the first several timelines, and that makes her a lot of the time seem either a little omniscient or a little jaded and annoyed with you. She's like, come on, we've both done this before, and Sigma's like, what on earth are you talking about? But then in later timelines, Sigma knows more than Fi because the more you've played of the game, it becomes obvious that the player is experiencing it at Sigma's pace, and Fi is experiencing the events of the story at a different pace, and you aren't always lined up for each other, and that makes following what Fi is saying a little confusing, but really fascinating. And I like that she has some attitude.
Yeah, and I like how that pace changes over the course of the game, because Sigma learns a lot really quickly toward the end, and he basically kind of overtakes her.
Yeah, one of my favorite scenes between them is when like Fi is like, you have to jump right now to disarm these bombs, and Sigma's like, okay, I'll do that, and then he's like, are you crazy? How am I supposed to do that? I have no idea. I'll just jump between timelines, sure.
And I think our first clue that we are dealing with some alternate timelines, kind like Akane did in 999, is that Fi remembers that you die if your BP drops to 0, and actually even Zero Jr. kind of like does a little nudge and is like, well, no one knew that before voting for the first time, right?
Yeah, it's like the 03 is probably like, oh, so it's working then.
Yeah.
the experiment is working.
Yo, that's so true. That did happen. So much.
If there's ever a game worth playing through a second or a third time, it's Virtue's Last Reward. You pick up on so much.
Yeah. I didn't even pick up. I mean, no, I picked up on the alternate timeline bit, but yeah, Zero does kind of nudge gently and poke fun of that a little. Yeah. Oh.
and I love how people are always making fun of Sigma for being old, calling him grandpa.
Old man.
Things like that do not make sense until you know everything that the game is.
Yeah. I'm so mad at myself for just going along with it and never questioning it. I'm like, yeah, that's a weird thing to say, but I don't why think about it anymore? Why does everyone keep calling me an old man, and just never thought about it? Like, I never saw that twist coming until it was literally told to me by Akane.
That's amazingly well done, actually, now that I think about it, because it happens across timelines at a few different points, and you don't question it. You just don't.
Yeah, and the scenes where Sigma is alone and hitting on like Clover, and you can and Clover has a whole new meaning when you realize that Sigma looks the way he does.
Yeah,
he has a robotic eye. His hair is all gray and greasy looking.
And I like when you in one of the last rooms in the director's office, Sigma sees the hologram video recording of Zero.
He's all by himself.
All by himself, and he looks like a villain in a Bond movie or something, a mad scientist with a robotic eye and all that. And the whole time, the first time I played this game, I'm like, wait, this is Zero. Isn't it supposed to be one of the players? And by then I had been through the golem room, and I'm like, oh, maybe one of the players is a golem being controlled by Zero. And but then you realize, oh no, that weird mad engineer, mad scientist is Sigma.
Yeah. It's crazy. And the amount of red herring Sigma goes through with the sort of like who's a robot, the whole who's a robot plot. There's like multiple people you can consider who is the robot. You could say, is it Sigma because you have the whole white stuff coming out of his arms and you think, well, okay, he's probably the robot then. It's confirmed. But you also have Phi because she has those superhuman feats of strength going on. And I was like, is it Phi? Was she really the robot? And I never really
and then there's Kay, who already looks like a robot.
Yeah, Kay, who looks like a robot. Yes, it's like, who's the robot? And it ends up being the person who doesn't even, is least suspected probably for being the robot.
Right, because you are just kind of primed to think of her as the super sweet, sympathetic one.
Yes, even though she looks identical to the picture of the Chinese room illustration where they're describing how a robot can interact with humans.
Oh my god,
right. And when you're speaking to the friendly Cockney golem in the golem room, who's secretly the most tragic death in the entire game, except for the Leona ending. I think Luna's in the room with you there when you're solving that puzzle, and the golem's about to say, "Well, there's one right," and then he gets cut off.
Yeah. Yes. There's one right and amongst you. Probably it was something he was going to say. There's one right there.
Yeah, he was about to point out Luna, but it's unclear unless you know ahead that Luna is a golem, and. The golem room ended up being a sort of creepy dungeon because I meant to say puzzle because you have these hanging racks of slightly scary looking robots and one on an operating table, but then when the main golem wakes up and starts talking to you, he's such a friendly fellow that it's like, oh, okay, this room's not scary at all anymore.
And the accent, like. Yeah, the accent.
He does not know why he has a Cockney accent. He was just programmed that way. And maybe he doesn't like it and wish he could talk differently.
Yep, it's true. Although there's a weird kind of darkly humorous moment slightly before that where like one of these robots in the line of robots randomly is wearing a pair of boxer shorts.
That's
right. You're going to have to take and use.
But they're important boxer shorts because you need them to wipe away the oil to find
the oil on the thing. Yeah,
I enjoyed that moment of levity.
No, that Golem is a great side character. That 5 to 6 minutes that you get with him is absolutely superb.
And they're playing some really quirky music when you're talking to him, just really disarming any fear that you have of this robot that's just suddenly popping up and talking to you. We should get to our favorite puzzles later, but what characters have we not talked about yet?
I'm going to name my favorite character that has not already been mentioned because obviously I like all these characters amazingly, but I'm also going to mention Kay, and I'm going to cheat because it's technically two people who is Kay. Kay is a character which I just found quite delightful, and one memory that sticks out to me is when he's riding the 03 like toy in the games room, the slot toy.
Yeah.
He just has this gleeful expression on his face. His little eyes light up, and he's just enjoying this ride on 03. I love that quirky insight into his character, but
it is.
Yeah, he's quite a logical character, and quite reasonable a lot of the times until, but sometimes he will just stab you in the back and leave. Like he will abandon everyone. Sometimes.
Yeah, there are some endings where he will just stride right through that number 9 door when he has 9 BP. And then he will vote betray fairly often, if I'm not mistaken. As long as he don't cause anybody else harm.
Yeah, I think it's like a 50-50 split, honestly. I think he won't kill anyone, but apart from that, he'll vote betray.
Mm-hmm. And he always apologizes if he ends up abandoning everyone and leaving.
Yeah.
But it's I can only forgive him so far for that, because it's still a pretty rude move.
Yeah.
It's so rude to leave me here forever, Kay.
Jeez, Kay.
But he is also Akane Kurashiki in one timeline.
Yeah,
and
so
Akane herself is such a interesting character.
Kay can stand for Kyle or Connie.
Oh my god, you just blew my mind.
Damn.
Oh my god. Or Kurashiki, even.
I like how they drop those Schrodinger's cat references to kind of illustrate that situation. Because it could be Kyle, it could be Akane.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
And having a visual novel flowchart to explain the concept of events in the future influence the past is a very helpful illustration for how quantum mechanics works. I think I understood quantum physics better after playing this game. Yep. Better than any physics or chemistry class I took in high school or college.
I certainly felt I understood Schrodinger's cat a bit better. Yeah. Also, not just about animal abuse; it's actually like a thing.
Oh, so there is one other character. Well, okay, two other things that should probably be mentioned before we move on is that Alice is also vaguely connected to 999 because she is the hitchhiker that everyone picked up at the conclusion of 999.
And not a mummy that had been sleeping in that ship for decades.
That was all nonsense.
And she even says something like, "Oh yeah, I got that all the time," but no, that's not how it happened.
But they leave you wondering just enough throughout the game. Like, are we going to get an answer for that?
Seriously?
No. The answer is no.
The answer is no answer. But it also turns out she's recruited Clover, and they are actually part of a Defense Department operation. They're secret agents, basically, which is pretty cool.
Secret psychic agents.
Yeah, and Alice because she's just an extremely brilliant and capable woman, and Clover because she has psychic powers from the two experiments she took place that she experienced twice. The second of which was the events of 999.
Yeah, you learn fairly late on in the game that a lot of the other characters have actually been kind of brought into this situation to enhance the jumps that Phi and Sigma have to do.
It's a heartbreaking revelation as well to know that these characters have only just been brought in to enhance a plan, as it were. I felt that was a bit of a kick in the teeth to the other characters. I was like,
not Clover.
Oh, not Clover. No, why? I get why, but why? Why logically? Sure, in the framework of the universe, but why emotionally? Why?
You said that cold, calculating side of a canny.
Yeah, seriously.
Last award, it's you could extrapolate from 999 what her character is. She would have to be very cold to put Junpei through that whole situation in the first place and mastermind the way she did. But you really see in Virtue's Last Reward that she is a genius. She's definitely a genius level.
One question that was in my mind, and maybe we should talk about this a little bit later, but because she's kind of orchestrating these events again, but it's sort of a much larger scale, isn't it? Because this is some background that we probably should have given earlier, but there is a horrible epidemic of a Radical 6 virus that basically wipes out humanity, and actually that is her master plan, is to jump and use the timelines to avoid that massive destruction.
Yeah, basically have 45 years worth of research and knowledge with Kyle Klein, who is Sigma, to go back and prevent the events that would then go on to cause the apocalypse, basically.
Yeah, and Sigma and Phi were ideal candidates for this, and which was why they're made the subjects of this game, orchestrated extremely carefully, so that they'll gain enough psychic powers to go back in time and prevent the apocalypse. I was a little confused by the wild ride that you're taking on for the final ending of this game.
Yeah, the whole it's really a straight line, but here I'm going to give you this incredibly complicated graph.
Yeah,
it's really a straight line, but you're just experiencing the timeline in a completely different order.
Yes,
right.
And this extremely convoluted set of tests that were 40 to 45 years in the making are just so we can go back to this point and change whatever happened in that Mars research laboratory.
Yeah.
Right, the horrible events that released this virus and doomed us all.
Right.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just found myself kind of cycling back to, those high stakes, I guess, really forced her further down that path of just calculating and choosing, how do I save the greatest number of people? And that is really heartbreaking because she went through 999. Well, a version of her went through 999 with Clover and obviously Junpei.
You certainly see the characters who had to actually live through the apocalypse are more weathered and beaten down by their, their personalities have changed over these 45 years. The Akane is definitely going further down this sort of logical, must save everyone. That gleeful little girl is gone, and Junpei's, he's gone through the ringer. Yeah. I guess Sigma as well, but we don't really know much of old Sigma just yet.
I'm trying to find the words to explain my feelings on this. Like in 999, Akane was desperately recreating her memory from 9 years earlier, so she could survive. Like to prevent her own death and to make the horrible things that happened to the 18 children 9 years earlier. She had to recreate everything from her memory. I think that I sort of believed in that more than I believed in what happened in in Virtue's Last Reward, because it's like did she really have to have herself die in multiple timelines? Did she really have to abduct 3 people and put them to sleep for 45 years so they could be in this timeline at this time? At first, Sigma assumes that he was one of the people that was captured and sent 45 years to the future, but really it was Alice, Clover, and Phi. And it seemed a little ultra specific and weird.
Yeah, the way I interpreted these things is when you have the powers that Akane and Sigma and Phi have, death kind of loses a lot of its meaning. And I imagine to Akane, herself dying wasn't very important. And it kind of comes up in the Zero Time Dilemma. This idea is brought even further. It's like when you have the powers of a god, when you can cross all timelines, when your life isn't necessarily bound to a specific body, what does death really mean? And that's why I think she was not afraid of using herself as a sacrificial lamb to get things going.
Yeah, no, I agree with you in that sense. It's like, if you attain the power of godhood and you have the ability to spatially go through different timelines, like they did that really interesting diagram of it with the 1 dimension, 2 dimension, 3 dimension, 4 dimension, explaining it really specifically. And me as a little bit of a dum dum, just being like, whatchamacallit, like, oh, I get it now. This understands, but to not be limited. I mean, there are limits, as it were, but not to be limited too loosely to different timelines. Yeah.
Yeah, I really love the diagram or the talk you got from Zero and that Sigma and Zero had, where he was talking about termites being part of a larger structure that they couldn't see, and maybe humans are part of this larger structure. We're building towards something, but we don't have the dimensional vision to see what that structure could be, and that structure could be this time thing that's going on with Sigma and Phi. We're all part of this giant multi-layered, multi-dimension wonder, really.
Yeah, it made me think of like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where the humans on Earth don't realize that Earth is the work of art, Earth is the computer.
Yeah.
But they touch onto so many different elements, not just quantum mechanics in VLR. I thought that the disease Radical 6 was its own weird, insane creation. A disease that makes you go insane by slowing down your perception until you have an overwhelming urge to kill yourself. But then the reveal at the end, all of you have Radical 6 because we needed that slower perception in order for you to develop your psychic powers more easily. And it only just happened to manifest the suicidal urges into Quark and Alice. But the cold sleep stuff, the time travel stuff, the quantum mechanics stuff, the Radical 6 stuff, man, it's such a weird puzzle, and I'm amazed that it comes together as well as it does at the end.
Yeah, and the gravity as well, like the fact that it's 1/6 gravity, which
but Phi's the only one that seems to realize it, so she's the only one with superhuman jumping ability.
Yeah, I like when Akane was wearing Kei's suit, I was like, "There's no way this old woman is lifting up Kei's suit." And it's
But
like,
she
wait,
can.
that one second gravity. And also when she was like holding Clover in her arms. When you first come out, the ambidextrous, I was like, how strong is Akane? This
And because I had been jumping timelines so much, and she does, and Akane's only inside K's suit in that one ending, I had completely forgotten that. Because the game is basically divided into 3 timelines, depending on which of the first doors you open. In that third one, you never find the old woman's corpse.
Yeah,
right. You
So
don't at all.
and because I had done so many other like scenarios where you did find the corpse, that had completely escaped me. Like, oh, so I save her now, but she still dies in 2/3 of the timelines. But she was never dead in this one at all. So she was really under K's all along, or was she not under K's until I changed the past? Does the future really influence the past? I don't know anymore. This game is insane.
Yeah, I love that even the characters in the game are like, what timeline are we on? Wait, who went in this room in this timeline? I'm like, oh, it's Hugh Clover. Okay, can you give me that? Okay.
Wait, you mean you don't have the bomb code?
Yeah. It's like this is very confusing.
I don't know why giving you a code is going to help because we're all going to explode in 15 seconds anyway. But here's bomb code number 1.
Oh yeah, thanks, Dio.
We haven't really mentioned Dio yet.
I was going to say that was the other. Yeah, that was the oversight. The other oversight I was going to point out earlier is so the last piece of the puzzle here is Dio and his arc. Really, I think the main thing it accomplishes is sort of explaining why Radical 6 came about and the whole free the soul.
Yeah, he's a soldier in a terrorist organization, and you learn about that in the second half of the game in various timelines, and figure out that he murdered the old woman and infiltrated the experiment on purpose.
Right. Not only did they want a large portion of humanity to die in order for people to be saved, but they wanted to make sure that somehow they had an idea about this plan and they wanted to make sure it failed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think part of the point of the name Free the Soul is that they believe that everyone except for the most enlightened people are corrupted, and they want to free as many souls as they can by murdering as many people as they can. So
right,
so they orchestrate this apocalypse that wipes out roughly 2/3 of the population of the world.
Yeah, and of course the most enlightened people are the most advanced, highest ranking in their organization.
I also thought, considering the sort of themes of this game, or like the powers that people have, like Phi and Sigma kind of exist outside of normal reality. Free the soul. Could you consider their souls free from their body, free to roam wherever they wanted, really? And we know that Brothers and Esperin could maybe have this sort of religious aspect come from his own perceptions of how he's viewing the world, possibly out of sync with the rest of people.
It's a fairly amoral, or what's the word, skewed moral system in terms of Brother. It's really interesting. It runs up against Akane's at least thesis statement in this timeline, or in this universe of Zero Time Dilemma, because it's like it's two sides of the same coin. And one of them is obviously horrific. The other one is trying to correct the horrific mistake. Yeah. But both are morally challenged, I think, in the way that they go about it.
Correct the mistake, but do whatever is necessary to correct said mistake.
Yes, and the means, it's the age-old story or narrative conflict of do the means justify the end? What's the word? And I'm not too sure personally. I have to think about that a little bit more. But it's an interesting question that it postulates.
It's even more like philosophical when you get into it from the perspective of Akane or Clover or Alice or all the people who are left behind. Did it matter at all that Sigma went back and changed a possible timeline? They'll never see it.
They don't know because they'll never see it.
Their timeline will continue on. It'll be like everything was for nothing as far as they're concerned.
Yeah.
It's quite depressing.
Because it's not like it automatically immediately changes. It's just another splinter and another timeline on the flowchart of the world. I guess the flowchart of the world spirals into a positive ending. Maybe that's the crux. Maybe it happens, and that's it's devastating. The scene with the scenes with Alice and Clover and Quark and Temioji kind of really like they use that metaphor about the motorcycle on the highway. They really hit the metaphor home of like we're going to have to still live with this. What's the one? And we've been living with this. Temioji and Quark have been living with it for so long, and Alice and Clover are now going to have to live with it. Yeah,
and it's they're not erasing timelines or correcting the timeline with Akane's grand plan. They're just trying to create a new one where this apocalypse doesn't happen that they can all live in.
Yeah, it's more like there's nothing we can do to save this one, but maybe we can create a little bit of happiness somewhere.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, whoa, it's not so optimistic as you might think at first.
All right, so I just came up with a joke, crazy theory. There's some timeline somewhere, I'm pretty sure, where Snake is brother, because where is he in this game? He's an Esper too.
Correct. Yeah, Snake is brother. Yeah, no, it's not.
They make it abundantly clear who brother is. In the third game, and it's not Snake, I promise, but it is some real nonsense once you see everything that happens in that game.
Oh man,
good. I'm excited. I'm all for nonsense.
Let's change around.
What's the word? I'm glad that Snake isn't the ultimate mastermind, because I came around on Snake towards the end of 999.
Right.
And he's a musician now. He's like a famous musician. What's the word? Which is freaking wild. Good on Snake. Like Snake's making moves up in the world. He doesn't deserve to be like an overarching villain for a series that delves into time and consciousness. That's fine. He's already been through enough. He was a moral support for all those kids in 999. Let him play his gosh darn harp.
But again, he's separated from Clover in this, continuous timeline again.
Yeah. Probably dead in this timeline, to be honest.
Oh yeah, true.
Oh man,
I'm sorry.
I don't think the post-apocalyptic world that Tenmyoji and Quark grew up in would be very kind to a blind musician.
Something tells me.
No. But remember, he can fight real well. He's got supernatural reflexes. So, like, if anyone's going to mess with him, akin to Daredevil, he can maybe take care of himself.
But he's Daredevil, yeah.
He's Daredevil.
Karate chop, radical sex.
Not even a person. He just karate chops the virus in the air, and then it flies apart. Damn. Okay. Solved. That's it. The apocalypse is done.
Yeah, the characters in this game are pretty fantastic, and I think one major reason why it all works so well is because you get these little micro interactions among them in the form of the Ambidex games, where they're in these really high-stress situations, and they have to choose whether to trust each other or not. So I wanted to kind of go around and say, what are the particularly interesting Ambidex results or interactions that you remember?
Always the first one that jumps out to my memory is when you vote against, I'm going to say Alice, and she perhaps allies with you, and you betray her, and then you feel bad, she eats you out for it, or or whatever. But then you go back and say, okay, I'll pick a different choice, but then the opposite still occurs, and you're like, what the hell?
What just happened?
Why is she betraying now and I'm allying? Why is it always stuck this way? And I always remember that being a very surprising sort of result for me.
Yeah, because she does the opposite of what you do.
That's another case of the future influencing the past.
I was so mad.
It's like like the first time I played this game, Alice betrayed me because I was more naturally inclined to ally, and I'm like, oh damn, this stinks. I'll go the other pathway and betray. So this time neither of us will get points. But then she allied in that timeline. So they communicated very clearly early on that people won't behave consistently the same in every path, and you can't manipulate other people's decisions to win at the game. You have to sort of see every possible outcome to get the full picture of the game.
Yeah, and it's interesting because they kind of say that to each other at a few various points too, because they're like, oh, I guess you don't trust me enough. I understand why you voted the way you did.
I love when they say that and then they betray you. Every time. Alice, Junpei, all say, trust me. You can trust me. I'm your friend. And then they immediately betray you. You get a complex after playing Virtue's Last Reward. You feel like you're never going to trust anyone ever again.
There's a great scene. There's a great scene where Fi and Kay are voting against each other, and they both have this great conversation on why the optimal solution is to both vote ally, and then they end up both voting betray. And then they can't look at each other in the eye. It's like yeah, okay.
Yeah, all they can do is shrug at each other. They're just like, yeah.
That was the scene that I was going to bring up about Kay and Fi. Another one that highlights to me is when you finally find out what Dio is and who Dio is, and his overarching thematic message of betraying everyone except Luna, I want to say, if my notes are correct. He betrays everyone, and then you find out more about what he is. But every single time that once you're in the timelines where you figure it out, and you kind of skew the AB game to kind of catch him out, it is extremely satisfying to me to kind of using the AB game as a way to kind of ferret out his duplicity, as it were. And
he votes ally only once, but I thought it was against Quark. So so my understanding was he voted ally once just so he wouldn't be targeted by everyone else, and also because I think my theory is, being a twisted member of Free the Soul, I think he views Quark as a pure soul, and it may be the only pure soul. Was my thought, but I don't know for sure.
Neither do I, honestly. Yeah.
I think I know. I think it was because he only had 5 BP at the time. So even if he betrayed, he would only have 8, and he wouldn't be able to get out anyway. And then
maybe that was it. Yeah,
he would betray a kid who would die in that case. So it would be untrustworthy in any future AB game going forward at that point.
Yeah, that's true. And there is this, everyone is saying early on in those first couple Ambidex games, why would you vote against a kid?
Mm-hmm.
And he, even in the very first round, he tries to blame Quark for voting betray, it's extremely transparent that he's the one that did the betraying, or at least it was to me.
Yeah,
but,
it was extremely transparent, but I still, in the back of my head, was like, is Quark a little evil genius?
Yeah, is Quark the mastermind behind everything? Yeah. And I was going in the back of my head as well. I'm like, he's like, Mr. Dio! And then whatchamacallit, then Dio's like, nah, he just said it, man. Like, whoa, this kid, you should watch out. And I'm like, should we watch out for him?
Yeah. You can't help it.
You can't help it, because you can't, I think the game just forces you to kind of, examine the relationships that you have as the player between these characters. Yeah. I found out he does it. The only person he doesn't willingly betray is Luna, unless she's already dead, because he views her as beautiful. And he's also nicer to her than the other players. It's a little bit of trivia there.
That makes sense, considering his very creepy backstory.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that he had, I use air quotation marks, troubles, with women. Yes. Women as part of his the only schism in his dogma and brainwashing in Free the Soul. Yeah,
yeah, that makes total sense to me.
Yep, it's dark. That's some dark. Yep, but Quark. Yeah. The AB game is maniacal and duplicitous. It's a very interesting.
A very fun twist on 999 to add the AB game to. I really did enjoy voting every time and seeing how the votes were going to turn out. I really did look forward to the little board coming up.
Yeah, it broke up the gameplay nicely.
There was a point in the game where the AB game was starting to become the focus. The escape rooms were kind of dabbling out a little, and then it was more about the kind of the relationships between the characters and the timeline jumping, and I really liked that part of the story. I liked the escape rooms, but when it started heading towards that kind of more about who these characters are and why they are and how they react to each other and what sets them off and what doesn't set them off, I found it fascinating. Yeah, the stuff with Dio is the thing that comes to mind for me, at least. He's a bad man. Yeah. Bad man. And I'm glad he gets everything that is coming to him, as it were. Yes.
I mean, he doesn't get a little ride in the back of a car.
No, he doesn't. He also doesn't have prosopagnosia. No. he can remember the faces of others, and he didn't try and organize an irritating plan to kind of, maybe be able to see faces again.
Right, unethical, run a pharmaceutical company and have an extremely unethical plan.
But they even mentioned that the people in the pharmaceutical company, including Ace, were members of Free the Soul.
Yes.
Yeah, but You see Snake wearing the robes, don't you, in the first game, in the Free the Soul robes. When you first find Snake in the coffin, he's wearing these ornate robes, which are the Free the Soul robes.
You do! I knew they were familiar.
I hear your voice where you just like, oh my god, I love that every time.
Damn, he did, because the symbology. Yep. Damn, these games are good. They're good with their multi-tiered foreshadowing. That's good. I like that.
They tie together well.
Wow.
So what you just said about the characterization being the real driving factor in the game, that segues nicely into probably the one area that I had trouble with, which was just kind of toward the middle, having to go back and redo the first AB game and those segments with those puzzle rooms so many times, I think is the only point where things really dragged.
Yeah, you basically have to do the events following your second puzzle. So following the cyan, yellow, magenta doors.
Yep.
You have to basically do that 6 times, or maybe even between 6 and 9 times, depending on who trusts you or distrusts you after the game. I'm sorry, after the that first round of escape rooms. And it's annoying having to replay an extremely similar segment so many times in a row.
Yeah, with very minor differences. I also felt like another annoying part of the game was the amount of times you had to follow the little dot on the map.
Yes. Here's the location.
Oh, yeah.
But sometimes you go on forever, and I'm just like, this game is 2/3 plot, 1/3 puzzle, and 1/3 following this bloody dot.
Wait, I think that's 4/3.
It's 4/3. I know. There's an extra third that was added just for this dot.
The dot is nothing extra.
And it's silly because like they showcase that they can instantaneously switch between rooms to other rooms, but that dot thing is still there. You still have to look at it as it goes up and down floor A and floor B. They showcase that you can switch between it. It's minor gripe, but totally understandable. Yeah. Oh.
And also this game has 16 puzzle rooms, which is the same number as 999.
Oh.
But I think you can beat all of the puzzle rooms and see all the endings in 999, and maybe half the time it takes you to do the same thing in VLR, just because there's so much reading and so much following the little blip across the map and watching yourself go up and down elevators. like VLR, there's a lot of plot and it's good, but there's also just a lot of waiting and watching and reading that maybe there could have been less of it.
Siggy, Fido!
Every time! I hate that little rabbit. I do.
Yeah, and hearing that like 6 to 9 times after you vote for the first time.
It triggers something in you.
It does. It's like, shut up,
Yeah.
I want to be done with you.
And then they play that really... I mean, Zero Junior's a character, right? He's a side character. They play that really sad farewell music when it's for Zero Junior to leave. And I'm just like, every single time, I did the skip function to get through all of his dialogue. It plays it at like ultra speed, and then it goes into silence. I'm like, yep, that's the way that God intended it. That's the way that it should go. Because man, that first time when he's like, I'm sorry guys, I'm gonna have to leave you. I'm like, I won't miss you.
Yeah, you may hate the character, but you've got to give it up to the voice actress.
Oh, dude,
absolutely passionate in that role.
It's performed so well.
Yeah, I love it.
The voice acting in the game, just in general, is pretty top notch. I want to say there is no deliveries in that game. At least, like as much as I dislike Zero as a character, I can appreciate the voice acting. Everyone's voice acting in this game is like pretty much spot on and on point for the characters that they're trying to convey. Yeah, the moods and tones and
really good.
Quark sounds like a little kid. He talks like a little kid. Temioji sounds like a tired, groaning old man. The voice acting is something that is to behold. Did you guys have any personal favorites in the voice acting department for characters that really helped like sell the character to you?
I mean, I thought that Dio was perfectly douchey in his voice role, and I'm also very amused, at least for the English voice actors. Dio and Alice are married in real life, and were both characters in Persona 3, so I enjoyed that very much.
I in a similar vein, Alice, I think, is when she's a pretty bitchy character in this. This game wants you to be frustrated with her a lot of the time. I felt like her voice actors really made me like grit my teeth sometimes. Like, your tone right now is very annoying, Alice.
Yeah.
Why are you like blaming me when you just did the same thing?
But then that scene where she kind of lets her guard down with you is pretty well performed. Like there's a change in that tone.
When she's talking about her father and she's so sad.
Yeah, I shed a tear at that scene as well. The idea of whatchamacallit when she says why don't you just like I think I might have this wrong, but she says why don't you just kill me, because at that point like she has at least in the AB game like tried to kill you, or I think it's at that point where she wakes up after being given the Accelavir to cure the Radical 9, and then she chooses betray, and in one of the bad endings you die, but in the
oh my
other
god,
ending,
that scene where you see Alice in the doorway.
Yeah. So it's one of those scenarios where you picked betray and she picked betray, I think, and because you both did, you didn't lose the points, but you would have been negative.
And that scene is impactful. Yeah, she's just like, why don't you want to kill me? And you're just like, no, that's not who I am. Well, Sigma's just like, no, that's not who I am as a person or a character. And then you get her character and backstory in regards to her father, which is sad.
Despite the fact that there are other timelines where Sigma tries to go through that number 9 door, like it's a very strange feeling seeing these vastly different reactions and people saying they won't do something or will do something, making promises, breaking them.
Something that's very human in a lot of the characters. They're not always 100% logical sometimes. Sometimes you could just see fear in people wanting out of the situation.
Yeah, a lot of the bad endings are just someone can't handle it anymore, so they make a break for the door.
Yeah. Were you very surprised the first time you actually made it past the number 9 door and it didn't cut out like to a bad ending?
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god, I'm actually seeing the other side of this door.
Right? But you get a bomb code.
Yeah.
I think the last major area that we have to discuss is puzzles and puzzle rooms. So,
oh god.
Yeah, the puzzles got a little bit bigger and more complicated than in 999. It's less finding hidden objects and more, connecting hidden objects with some number or visual puzzles that can get pretty challenging.
Oh, and a lot of color puzzles, which is fun for me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yikes.
Yeah.
A lot of color puzzles.
When I first played this, I had a spreadsheet for a couple puzzles and a notebook for the others, and I very proudly beat the whole game without checking any online solutions. But because I was playing this on this was 4 years ago when I was pet sitting for a friend and basically just basically just alone in the house for 7 days. Just playing VLR and taking care of dogs.
Marathon. That's great.
Yeah, I did. I bought a Vita, and I want to say 2015, and I basically bought 4 games in the first month or so of having it. So I didn't have very many games on the machine, but VLR was one of them because I was really eager to play the sequel to 999. So I binged those 4 games super hard right away. But anyway, this time because I knew I was playing on a slight deadline. And I beat the game about a little over a week ago, like 8 or 9 days ago, because I was this time I happily went to the internet for a couple puzzle solutions, just so I wouldn't be stuck on them for hours and writing in a notebook like I did 4 years ago.
Sometimes you're hunting for a thing to trigger the next thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like I didn't know what panel to hit or something.
Yes.
Right.
But I was proud of myself. I'm much better with number puzzles than I am with visual puzzles. So, like I had for like clicking the red or the magenta and green panels, I looked up solutions online. But for the dartboard math, I was able to figure that out on my own. So I'm not bad at these. But this time I definitely checked a guide for, I don't know, probably a full half of the puzzles in the game.
Yeah, that leads to a really interesting point. Well, this is not a very colorblind friendly game.
No, especially like red-green color blindness is, I think, the most common one, especially.
The one I have,
Yep.
Yeah, and the there's a lot of hit the red versus the green.
Well, even the doors, even the nonary game itself, the doors are chromatic doors.
But like for those dartboard puzzles and those color switching puzzles, sometimes it's like, you have to do them in this color order or get them in.
Right.
And I'm not colorblind, but this game definitely poses a problem for colorblind players, definitely.
Yeah.
Right. No, the chromatic doors is kind of a joke.
It's like the whole theme is color, and it's just like, that's great.
It's a theme.
I'm not worried at all.
And the second part of the point is there's actually a good variety of puzzle types. There is some logic puzzles, there are some more numerically oriented puzzles, there's some kind of sequencing puzzles, and some color.
Yeah, and some nightmare put the ball in the hole puzzles.
Oh my god. Okay, one of my like laugh out loud moments in this game is when you get to the treatment center.
Yeah.
And there's this simple like jellyfish. You put the thing in the whole puzzle, and they're like, if you don't do this immediately at this point, we're disappointed in you, and you should be sad.
And we are judging you. It's like, wow.
Joey, they judged me. They judged me hard on that puzzle, man. I failed.
I think the ice puzzle in the pantry took me. That one took me several tries to do, and I think it's it's either Fi and Clover or Fi and Alice in there with you, and they get super judgy around failure number 9 or 10.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why don't you just do it, Fi?
I love if you put it on easy, like they'll the easy difficulty, they'll spell out the puzzle solution to you. But if you leave it on hard, they'll just kind of bitch at you.
Yeah, that's.
Oh no, I was doing some trophy hunting in this game. I was not going to switch to easy.
You start every puzzle on the hard difficulty, and if you get stuck, you can switch it. But that means that puzzle room, you're on easy.
Yeah, you don't get the gold file reward, which is like full of spoilerific tidbits, I want to say.
Mm-hmm. They're mostly illuminating to read, but mostly I just wanted to get them for completion's sake. Mm-hmm. I was not going to leave the room with just one password.
Right. Oh, okay. So yes, quick explanation. There's a safe in every puzzle room, and that's the goal. And there are always 2 passwords. There's one to get out of the room, and there's one for a secret file that gives you extra information about important items or people or events. And sometimes it's just fun.
Oh yeah, sometimes
in one room, I accidentally got the gold file way before the escape file. I think it might have been 2 rooms, but it was. So sometimes the gold file is like take the final puzzle and do this weird offbeat task instead of finding the solution, and sometimes it's like, the gold file is just hidden in a totally separate puzzle that you can get like 20 minutes before finding the escape solution. It was always fun and rewarding, but sometimes a little head scratching. It's like, why did they put the gold file here and the escape room there? I don't get it.
Yeah. I think another one where I found difficulty was the golem room with the spelling of the password and how to get that.
Yeah, one of them is you had to do you did it in the order of the golem's eyes lit up, and the other one was the order of the golem's eyes not being lit up.
That's it. Yeah.
Yep. I was stuck on that one.
That took me a while. That one.
But it's cool because it does really force you, like the puzzle rooms where you know that the 2 safe passwords are really connected. It really forces you to say, okay, how can I think about this puzzle in a different way? How else can I look at it to get a second answer that makes sense? And I love that.
Absolutely.
All right, so favorite puzzle rooms.
I mean, with a bullet for me, my favorite puzzle room was the last one, I want to say. It is probably the coolest aesthetically in the entire series, honestly. Aesthetically coolest and most interesting kind of juxtaposition of aesthetic purposes and actual practical purposes in the terms of spatial awareness, and it kind of really focuses on the theming of VLR as a whole, both narratively, and it kind of is a greatest hits of all of the, or not all of them, but a lot of the puzzles that you encountered in all of the previous rooms.
I did not appreciate that room bringing back the dice rolling puzzle, only because rolling the dice with a with a joystick is annoying you can do it with the touchpad on the Vita or 3DS, which is much better. But doing it with a PS4 controller, it was both the dice puzzle, both in the archives and in the quantum room, were pain in the rear.
Difficult. Yeah, but the idea of just like going through, to get the 3 memory cards to activate the terminal, which allows you to essentially complete the puzzle room. I thought it was. I struggled with a lot of the rooms. What's the word? Personally, I did it all on hard mode, but I spent a lot. Like when I say a lot of time, guys, like a lot of time, like a lot of time. Like I spent many hours on various puzzle rooms because I'm not the brightest. Like I'm not the brightest when it comes to numbers or spatial awareness. The logic puzzles and word puzzles, they were fine, but but it took me a long time. I managed to crack through all of them. But this one was like kind of like a nice juxtaposition between puzzles that I quite enjoyed during the entire playthrough versus the kind of rising tension or rising suspense as to what actually is happening. I thought it was the perfect marrying point between the two, and that's why I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like a close second to that would probably either be the pantry or the crew quarters. The crew quarters fairly early on, and the pantry, I found the pH sliding scale to be just like a bundle of fun to kind of navigate and figure out. Just be like to just kind of find out which level is the one to do.
And the trick is the water is slightly acidic from the get go.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and it was a fun little guessing game. To kind of puzzle out and deal with. I will say some of those safe passwords for the secret files, man, they were. Some of them are obvious, some of them are not obvious. Oh, what's the word? Yeah, some of them are very interesting. You have to kind of, as you say, Hilary, think outside the box. How about you guys? What are your favorite puzzle rooms in the experience of Virtue's Last Reward?
I loved the botanical gardens just for the change. Just for this change of setting, and also I think the puzzle in it was pretty good. You had to collect a lot of items first, but just it being such a nice setting to play around in, and also it being a very large setting where you had to change your position within the room several times, but then ultimately. Following the symbols illuminated in the stream felt like a fun final reveal, and also that was a secret file that was very logical to me because when you do them by the order you find them, you get the password to escape, and when you do them in order of the size of the star, then you get the password for the gold folder. It's like this didn't feel over convoluted or over complicated, and this is a very beautiful place that I liked spending time in.
There's just something really like comforting after. In the middle of the game about having a veggie cutting coin puzzle. You get to play with veggies.
It's like, I get to pull like carrots out of the ground and some of them have coins inside. If I was a child, I would have loved doing that. I thought it was weird that they called it Bee Garden and no one seemed to figure out that B obviously stood for botanical.
Yeah. Everyone just called it Bee Garden. Apart from the Bee Garden, I like the Golem room. I do.
Yeah.
Half because Gollum is such a fun character, and just half because there's that sinister sort of creepy atmosphere in there that you can really feel. And it's that it does have one flaw, which is when there's so many shells with so many little things on them, and you try to collect all these little things like a tiny screwdriver. It's like, no, these aren't interactable. But apart from that, I really do like that room and that puzzle.
So those two are definitely really high on the list. The other one that I think I might want to mention is the lounge. I just kind of like the atmosphere, and I was really amused by the cocktail and liqueur names, and just having a puzzle that centered around making cocktails was pretty fun. And just the weird pairing of that with the astrology puzzle.
Yeah, probably had the strongest theming to like the overall plot.
Yeah,
as well. Like the red moon and.
Right, the eclipse, and it's sort of it's the one that got everybody thinking like, well, how much time has actually passed since we got to this strange place? And
I just have this weird feeling. I can't describe it. It's a weird feeling.
My body feels light.
Yeah, it's really light for some reason.
I'm getting headaches. I'm getting headaches every so often, man. What's the word? I just don't feel so good. I feel dizzy. On my foreshadow radar, that was a big thing. Being like, They're either infected with that virus or.
Yeah, there were like 3 or 4 different things going on there that they clue you into, so the lounge is good too.
Those puzzles were a mile beyond anything that 999 threw at you. The hardest puzzle in 999 is maybe a mid-tier to low-tier VLR puzzle.
Yeah.
I just want to throw that out there. It's like VLR had maybe 1 or 2 mini games in the later puzzles. Every VLR puzzle had either 2 to 4 mini games, and then I was like, oh man.
Yeah, the very first time I played this game, the second the elevator puzzle was of course first, but the second one I did was the crew quarters, and I think the crew quarters might be harder than every 999 puzzle.
Yep. Weirdly, it felt the most like, maybe it was the environment, but that felt like a very 999 environment.
Maybe it's
it reminded me a little bit of the prison cell in 999. That puzzle towards the end of the game.
Yeah.
In one path, but I mean, this game feels like a 999 sequel. It's there's a lot of DNA shared between these games. DNA, Hilary, you have thoughts on DNA? But I thought the puzzles were overall a little bit more complicated, a little bit more challenging, but I don't think they crossed the line for me. They might cross the line in ZTD, which I also think are a slight step harder than VLR's puzzles, or at least some of the later ones. But
you've got to be kidding me.
But I thought these were really fun and satisfying. I have very fond memories of writing down in my notebook the very first time I played this game. But and revisiting it, there was appropriate distance between me and my first playthrough of this that they felt very fun and a little nostalgic going back to them.
Good.
Even though this is a story heavy game that puts that a lot of the value is experiencing the story for the first time, it's fun enough that I was happy to replay it.
Yeah, I agree. The puzzles were generally fun. So let's go around really quickly before we wrap up and just say least favorites, and I'll start because I think I've already shared mine with all of you. But my least favorite was probably the laboratory because real life interfered, and I've worked as a DNA tech. The puzzles center around you finding specimens and supposedly looking at their DNA through a microscope, and extracting the DNA was also a part of the puzzle. So yeah, I spent a lot of time during that one going, well, why is the dissection under the hood? You need a hood for the DNA extraction. And wait a minute, they didn't lyse the cells. And
I think maybe that worked. My background worked oppositely for me since I do have a background in environmental science and doing field samples and stream monitoring. So the botanical garden just felt fun again. It's like, oh, I'm doing soil sampling and stream monitoring. I love that.
I'm at work. Yay.
I'm not doing a macroinvertebrate count or identifying the soil type, but I let that slide, I guess.
I don't know. I just couldn't let go. But I was happy, like, matching up the base pairs kind of felt pretty satisfying at the end, though, at least.
It was the puzzle room where I felt like the most I didn't know what I was doing. Like, what is the solution here? Like, oh, I got it, but I don't know how.
I can empathize with that statement, Leona. Yeah, I also didn't know what I was doing. Also, R.I.P. Lord Hoppington.
Okay, that was the other thing.
R.I.P. Lord Hoppington.
Don't store your DNA. I know it's in a nifty little capsule, but don't store your easily contaminated DNA sample inside a preserved frog.
Where do you
keep Lord Hoppington was taking very good care of that.
Yeah. Until you cut him open.
Clover got attached very
I think it was Clover. She was like, really, like, you can't do that.
I also like how there was like the fancy sample tray with the like dual-headed lion eating the sun motif just hanging around in the lab.
The amount of lions eating suns throughout this game.
They flash back to all of those in like one of the end game endings. Like I think it's near the true ending. They flash back to all of the 9 lions that you've seen throughout the entirety of the game. All of them. They just do like a huge, gigantic, like how they did the black and white, like memories slamming into Sigma, so he remembers. They do all of the lions, and I was like, damn, I didn't see 2 of those. Wow. Yeah. Oh, okay. They really hammed it on there. That this is a big key thing. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I did not pick up on the tray. That's how that relates to that. I didn't even see it. I was like, oh, what's this sequencer machine? What? They're saying that we can't use it now, so obviously that's important for later. Make a note of that in my notebook. Walk off.
And I also have to I have to dramatically say, oh, there are 9 of them.
Are there 9 of them? Are there?
It's the 9th line at the sun.
The 9th line at the sun. And guys, maybe you didn't notice this at first, but the big door that you have to use to escape has a giant number 9 on it.
Damn. It's too much. It's all connected. Everything's connected. The number 9.
Okay, so are there any other least favorite puzzle room gripes?
My least favorite is probably the PEC room.
Oh, yeah.
I spent a long time. There's a point where you're inside the chamber with the inflatable Zero the Third, which sounds more wrong than it is.
Yes, there's an inflatable Zero balloon.
Yeah, something. You just turn around at one point, it's right there. But there's a point where, like, I think Clover or someone's on like the other side of the glass and you're inside, and I could not figure out how to get out of this room. I spent maybe 2 hours trying to get out of this room before, you had to specifically click like a little section under a shelf.
It's a callback to when she gets trapped in 999 and you're supposed to get her to find something, and it's really hard to figure out exactly where to click to get her to see the instructions that you need to open your side of the door.
Yeah. And then there's a color puzzle with a doll as well. So I was like, oh, this room's not for me. And there's a color puzzle with a bunch of lines that you have to connect as well.
Yep.
It's a big no for me, that one.
Kicking myself a little bit right now for not questioning why they had to do so much pressure equalization and stuff.
Because
that's not the same as decontamination procedure at all. But I didn't question it.
Yeah, I mean, we spoiled everything, but they on the moon. That's the thing. They 150% on the moon. They staring at the Earth. The moment that you get out on Dio's ending, as it were, I think it's Dio's ending. It's the first time you go out the 999 door. Come on. The 9 door was the word. You got the 9 door, and you kind of understand what else is there. I'm just like, I'm kicking myself too for not picking that up earlier, because I was like, that's like an airlock procedure in any other science fiction show ever.
You'd be in space, yeah.
Yeah, you'd be in space.
Well, turns out that's also part of the plan.
So does anyone else have any least favorite puzzle rooms?
I mean, I think it would be unfair for me to say all of them. I think they're all. I think for me. Okay, I'll justify it. They're extremely well built, and I like them a lot. I'm just, I love the story, but the escape rooms, I'm like, it's good, but puzzle solving is, not my forte. But I love them. I'm like, this is both good, great, objectively, subjectively. Trent's having a hard time, but I can slide away and just be like, I wonder if the next game is. You say the next game has harder puzzles. I wonder if I could just slide away and just maybe brute force my way through those ones as well. Yeah, my least favorite and most favorite puzzle rooms are all of them. It's Schrodinger's puzzle room. That's my theory. Well, not my theory. My opinion on all of the puzzle rooms. They're good, but my God,
it could be any given one.
My God, it could be any given one that I like and dislike at the same time.
Yeah, they all have that one thing about them that just like drives you insane. They all have like that one thing that just trips you up.
Yep.
That's not inherent. That's not even inherently incorrect, because all of them each had one mini game that tested me. But it's a good game. Lots of good puzzles. 9 is an important number.
Any other final thoughts?
The cliffhanger ending where you're about to go back in time to save the world from destruction made me want to play the third game immediately. And that third game didn't come for, I want to say 3 years, maybe longer. I'd have to check the exact timeline.
Yeah, I don't know if it felt longer, because it was basically after the game it felt like it wasn't going to come out.
Yeah, it basically got cancelled and then revived.
Yeah. There's like so much like fan hype around it that interest was eventually received, and they did make the game. But it looked like it was cancelled, like that Virtue's Last Reward was all we were going to get for a long time.
Do you think that that's because of the sort of continuing trend of this series being really well received in the West?
I think it could have something to do with it,
Yeah,
for sure.
I think maybe it didn't have as much support in Japan, and being, from a Japanese developer, that made them less interested in bringing it forward in producing the sequel. But eventually, it was. I think it was fan demand, and that created genuine interest from new producers, and let them finally make Zero Time Dilemma. I mean, at least now the guy's still working. He's doing that collaboration with some of the Danganronpa staff that I'm pretty interested in.
I can't wait for that.
I can't wait.
Which also, it changes art style when it goes back to the past, and I thought that was a really nice touch. It goes back to the 999 style of hand, like, drawn.
Yeah.
There's a level of detail that I just
Yeah.
find interesting.
It really shows that they really do, or at least the creators of the series do love the story or the saga that they're telling, with the amount of callbacks and tie-ins, and they don't feel ham-fisted or shoehorned in like some other well-known and storied franchises in history. It feels subtle, and it feels human, and it feels real, which is a testament to both VLR and 999 in terms of its character and storytelling and art style and direction. We haven't mentioned much, but the music, I guess I could talk about the final thoughts.
Yes.
The soundtrack for both 999 and VLR are like follow-ons from each other in the best ways. The leitmotifs in 999 are evolved and used to great effect to enhance character moments in VLR. That's part of the reason why they affected me so much, is that specifically the highlights on the soundtrack. I linked a little bit of it in the pre-show, but the song that plays during Luna's ending with the musical birdcage music box that she carries as part of it. Yeah, and then it builds into this resonant symphonic orchestral finale while she's essentially dying.
My heart!
If there's anything to say about on the game, is the music. Like the composer Shinji Hosoe, he did fantastic work with tying the musical threads of those two games together, and it's part of the reason why I love VLR as much as I do. Yeah. That's my closing thoughts on that chapter of the franchise. Yeah.
I want to tie something in for my final thoughts, which is the opening movie. Had a tie-in like that for me when I booted the game up for the first time, and I heard that little musical strain that you hear at the end of 999 when Junpei and Akane are working together, and they have that kind of playing in the background with the video going through this, why do people betray each other? It really hit, and it made me very interested every time I booted up the game.
It evokes a real sense of intrigue, but also like melancholy. A lot of emotions mixed up in that particular track. A lot of emotions.
And now that I'm done going back to that, there's like another layer to it because of what Tenmyuji says about Akane not being the same person because she's orchestrated things so much. Because you're like, oh, that's a betrayal too.
It sure is. She chose the world instead of the, at least in that timeline, instead of the relationship that she could have had, or the rekindling of the relationship that she could have had with Junpei. And and he suffered. I mean, he chose it, granted, but he suffered greatly for that. And so did she, in her own way, to become the progenitor and the creator of trying to architect humanity, like to become like humanity's savior. It's a lot of very emotional. How about you, Sollosi? Do you have any final thoughts?
About Akane, I think she has regrets. She's just an unusually driven woman who is more determined to save as many people for the greater good, even if it's at the expense of Tenmyoji's feelings. So I respected her a great deal, as much as you can respect a video game character, I guess. My thoughts after this were, this is a game that 999 does it too, but it wants to subvert the idea of you play a visual novel multiple times to see all the endings.
Yeah.
And seeing the endings in a visual novel is part of the motivation to play one a lot of the time. And VLR and 999 and ZTD are like, oh yeah, what if the characters in the game remembered all of the times you did a new ending?
It's very fourth wall breaking, yeah.
And and they do it in a way that doesn't feel trite or weird. I really, really dug that subversion of what is a normal feeling video game idea. If you're familiar with visual novels, I was riveted the first time I played this game, and it was almost as fun playing it a second time and just seeing the breadcrumbs and seeing the characters react in different ways. Like I didn't notice them calling. I said this before, but I didn't notice them calling Sigma Grandpa so many times until playing it the second time.
Mm-hmm.
And just little things like that makes me realize that this is a very smartly designed, subversive, cool game that is greater than the sum of its parts. And the sum of its parts is pretty cool already.
Yeah. Okay, so housekeeping. First of all, upcoming retro episodes, we've got a favorite Tales of episode and a follow-up to our Thirst for Battle episode about battle systems, and then our next game journal is Vesperia. As usual,
that's the whole month of February right there.
So look forward to that. And as always, please send us email, retro@rpgfan.com, and find us on social media. Rate us through your preferred podcasting channel. And let's say where we can be found. We'll start with you, Sollosi.
Sure. I am at The Real Monsoon on Twitter most of the time, at Evoker for Dogs on Twitter other times. I am Monsoon Mike on Discord, and Monsoon on the forums, and Mike Sollosi in real life, even though we abandoned the whole codenames thing about 20 minutes in. But I didn't decide to police them as zealously as I did during the 999 episodes.
I think that's fitting. You know, this is the reunion, so it's okay.
And there wasn't codenames in this one, really.
Everyone used their real name except for, I guess, Dio, K.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe that's it. Luna's real name is a lengthy golem designation.
Yes. So that's okay.
I guess you can find me at I'm Trent Argirov. You could find me at ARKODO17, Arkodo17 on Twitter. I'm not super present on Discord, but I think I have my actual name, which is Trent Argirov, on Discord. Yeah, that's pretty much where you can find me. How about you, Leona?
Thank you. You can find me on Twitter at Starmongoose, and you can also find me on the RPG Fan Discord server, where I'm also Starmongoose, and you can also find me in the RPG Fan forums at Starmongoose.
Great, thank you for mentioning the forums.
Someone has to.
Yeah, so I'm EP Fire both on those forums and on Discord, and that's the best way to get in touch with me. And I'm Hilary. So thank you all for joining me and having this discussion of VLR. I'm so glad that we decided to continue and go on to the next game.
I'm a little less excited to continue on to Zero Time Dilemma. I don't know if we need to have a podcast about that immediately.
Immediately, but we could do a continuation sometime in the future.
We can save this discussion for outside recording.
Yeah, those of us who are new to the series want to know what happens.
Yeah, I understand you wanting to know what happens in the next game, but I am much less excited to replay that one than I was to replay Virtue's Last Reward.
It might surprise you, actually.
That's fair.
It might surprise you.
It'll surprise you, but it'll also confuse you.
Okay.
We'll agree to disagree in this one, Sollosi.
All right, well, thank you so much again for joining, and I guess this is the official end.